I've enjoyed the whole 2 days delightfully, absolutely delightful. They're a gorgeous group, very, aren't they? They're wonderful. I think on film, mainly, you know, your words are tiny. They're just replies to things, and you don't need to know them very well to know them, or you should know them always. I don't particularly like if actors, for no reason, decide to change the line because they haven't bothered learning it. I had an example of that recently where my line was, "Your friend is past help." So the cue had to be, "Will you please help my friend?" And the actress said anything but that. Said, "My friend is sick." No, she said, "He's sick. Can you give us some help?" But I wouldn't know it was your friend unless she said the word friend. So sometimes you do have to help the person. The wit is in saying, you know, "Will you help my friend? Your friend is past help." Is a reply to a line that has to include those words, or you can't say your friend if you don't know the people. So I think sometimes people improvise because they think it's better. It rarely is. A writer has taken a long time to polish those lines, so I'm very keen on respecting the lines. But if you know very ordinary lines like, "I'll have another cup, thank you," of tea, then probably if you overlearned that, you wouldn't have much more to do with it. So you want to learn it kind of, not just rather shallowly, so that you can really enjoy saying, "I'll have another cup, thank you." If you have a speech, you must learn it. And it's amazing seeing actors flounder on the day of the speech because they slightly go off. And all speeches, even if they're improvised in some way, they have a structure. The people start something and they go off on this way and they go that way. You have to learn it. And actually, one of the most interesting things I did, which was old-fashioned, but I did it with John Sessions, was we did Gormenghast. And because we were playing the Prune Squallers in the Gormenghast, we rehearsed every day for a week our scene because it was very fast. And that was the old 1940s technique. And we absolutely were going, "Well, brother, I don't know, well, sister." And we learned it. So when it came to it, it was heightened, but it was absolutely learned. And it's on the tip of your tongue and you're not thinking about it. And then other things can start to happen, but you're certainly not thinking about the line. And you cannot, and it is the biggest fault in filmmaking, particularly by actors, just think, "I don't know what's next, so I'll fill in the moment with what? With nothing." The filling in with nothing is nothing. Charlie Chaplin would be very right, because once he had the hat, there's a whole attitude that came with the hat physically. Once he was freed of that, his own physicality, which is quite normal, he was able to be in that slightly hatted. And that's very useful. When I played, you know, Irma Prunesqualler, I had false teeth, and of course, it dominated absolutely every decision you make. So that's great fun because you're freed of yourself. But if you're playing a classical character where your job is really to be the soul of the thing, what you're trying to do is not necessarily get a character, which is a description of someone else, but you're trying to open yourself up so that you are the satellite of the evening or of the film. You want things to go through you, and actually, really good actors, I don't think they have a clue what they're going to look like. Now, Bette Davis would say that's not true. She knows exactly that when she does that and that. The effect is that and that. But I think it's really good if you have a filmic face, then the camera is pleased to catch it at different angles. Some people only have one angle, where it's not their beauty, but that their resonant power only emerges on one angle. And really good film stars, often blankly, it doesn't matter what angle they're at, the film will always pick up meaning. That's kind of God-given, I think. So I think the word character doesn't mean a lot to me. It's an American invention, and it does mean a lot, you know, the character. I've played lots of different people, but in fact, in each one, all I'm trying to do is clear away the space so whatever dominates for that character dominates in the correct way. But, and I don't need to protect my mannerisms, and if you're freed of your mannerisms, that's really also, if you get freed of your mannerisms, and yet some actors get so freed of their mannerisms, there's nothing of them left. I've seen that, particularly in the theatre, where people have done a lot of exercise and they're all floppy, and they're thinking, and actually all you see is the exercise of them being floppy. So there's a bit of your own quirkiness that needs to stay, as long as it doesn't interfere with this openness of yourself. So ideally, you shouldn't know. I mean, Jack Nicholson, you know, is a very particular person. But in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, he's everybody. Even though he looks strange, he becomes very vulnerable. And you see Jack Nicholson's childhood in his vulnerability. So vulnerability is the big thing. And it's not an easy thing to access. And it's got nothing to do with being sad. It's to do with being open. In Terry Malick's film, where I played a very big part when we rehearsed it and filmed it, and a very small part in the end of the film, but that's the way Terry edits things. He would say, "Where would you like to do your scene?" And he only uses natural light, so there's none of that palaver. And he shoots by windows often, or outside. So I did the same scene, once walking up the hill, and with him moving the camera ahead, and another time inside. I'm not sure he used either of these, actually, but the experience was very empowering, because you were able to think differently about the weather. When you were outside, it affected how you performed these stories, the story or memory or whatever it was. And then when you're inside, something else happens. So you're kind of learning on the job. You're able to experience different things. I think actually a lot of film stars have a bad reputation for being difficult, when in fact often what they're doing is just demanding the circumstances in which they can do their thing. And I have never been in that elevated position, but I can see why they need the conditions correct sometimes. And I'm sure sometimes it's unnecessary. But poor directors tend to say, right, here we are, and go. And it just isn't like that. And I think the nearer any director is to any process that allows a process and allows the director not to be reassured that they're going to see the finished product immediately. But, you know, the pressures of time and money in film now are that you're lucky if there's more than 2 or 3 takes. I worked with Roger Michell, and we did a film, Persuasion. And he said a very interesting, she stuck in my head a lot. The first take is often very good. So it's worth the camera being ready for the first take. Often the flop of the first take is that the camera has something wrong with it. It's often very good, because not everyone knows everything about what's going to happen. The second take is often not so good. And the third take is sometimes better. If the third take isn't any good, you have to wait till the 10th take. And in general, it's best to not believe that there's a 10-take situation. But I've often frustrated the first take goes, it's often the best for me, and it's often the camera, there's a technical reason. So I think that's very good, that in general, the first 3 have a freshness, or the second one doesn't, but because you're commenting on the first one, but the third one, you can just get it better. But the 10th is very far down the line. It's very hard. I mean, it's the most stupid. It's not a very fulfilling thing to do, but that is the job. Last week I was doing this woman who had to come upon these people who were outside my house, and the boy had to run away. And I did it about 17 times, I suppose, for different reasons, not for my walking. And I did think about that each time you have to come up the hill and see the boy for the first time and chase him. And what I used it for was, I thought, I'll do less each time. I'll just, first of all, see him and be shocked, you know, then I'll do him and maybe be a bit shocked, and then see him and just notice that he was there. And I just used it as an exercise for myself to try and see if I could get away with doing less. I have no idea what the outcome will be. I think you discover how hard acting is, actually, and how much I admire actors on the day of the event, because the director doesn't have to do it. They have to do it. They have to remember so many moments, and the margin of error is so great that they launch themselves into this thing with a kind of dive. They have to dive off a diving board, and I think they go past terror and they go towards hope, and they go towards massive concentration and skill, that they're tired often by then. And I think that last section of the beginning of a performance is the hardest thing for a performer, or I could see that when I was directing. But I recently worked with an opera singer who's one of the best actors I've ever met. And he has an ability to act with other people and change with them whilst looking after his own area. And that sort of generosity and scale is very unusual. When you see it, you just want to devote your life to it. You think, I must do more and more with this person, you know. So there is a quality when a performer is inventing things as you go along. Somebody can think ahead or beyond the track of the story. I mean, I've worked a lot with opera singers, and it's very interesting how good they are at acting when they are. One of them recently picked up the child and carried it to bed during a sort of cor anglais before she tells her husband she's going, well, sort of going to commit suicide. And I didn't invent that at all. I thought she'd just walk. But she lifted up the child and put the child to bed, and everybody in the room was just weeping because the performer was creating the idea. And I'm always relieved when the performer creates the idea. The director should direct the performer to help them get better with their idea. So I always think directors are really igniters of good ideas. However, a lot of actors can't quite do that. I'm not sure the truth matters. The truth is in the eye of the beholder, but you know, the speed of the eye of the viewer is a very good guide of truth. They'll spot it. But if, as Picasso says, the lie is the truth, or the truth is a lie, I mean, the truth is a lie. It's all a lie. When people feel there's a very intimate scene going on when they're watching a film, there's actually 80 people watching them with a whole lot of technology around. There's no truth of, but there's a kind of energy is in clearing the space in your head so you really are as genuinely present for the thing that matters at that second, which is that the lover is upon you and you love him or her or something. You're editing out, I mean, the amount of emotional energy that's used to edit out the 60 people behind the camera and the fact there's a previous take and you're hungry, and the amount of negative capability at play is really huge. There is no truth in that regard. If you're asked to walk across a field, it's actually quite hard to do that truthfully and look at the sky. It's very hard to do that. And it's why I'm not sure the truth behaves in fiction in the same way as it does in documentary. If you watch somebody, ordinary people, walking across a bridge in a documentary, or just ordinary people, they're often not very interesting. And the point of the truth is that it resonates, the ordinary resonates, and that takes a sort of lie.